Our third game this week had the Buffalo Sabres and coach general manager Punch Imlach facing the Toronto Maple Leafs at Maple Leaf Gardens for the first time this season and the first time ever in the Sabres history. Now, the build-up for this game was enormous, both in Buffalo and in Toronto, given the considerable acrimony that still existed between Imlach and Toronto Maple Leafs president Stafford Smythe. Imlach, had been the Leafs general manager coach for 11 seasons, leading them to 4 Stanley Cups before being unceremoniously dumped by Smythe right after a playoff loss to Boston in 1969. Both of Imlach and Smythe had exchanged words via the media early in this season, and everyone who follows the NHL knows that this game was the one contest that Imlach wanted to win in this fledgling NHL season for the Sabres. So to say it was a big game was actually a bit of an understatement if you were a Sabres fan. And for Buffalo at least, it turned out to be one of the highlights of their inaugural season. At the beginning of the game, when Imlach emerged behind the Buffalo bench, the Toronto crowd was very happy to see him, and they gave him a well-deserved standing ovation in recognition of all the fine work Punch did do with the Maple Leafs. After all, as we mentioned, he did deliver 4 Stanley Cups. At the end of the night, they were chanting, "We want Punch. We want Punch." It was a wonderful triumph for Imlach before 16,345 sellout crowd at Maple Leaf Gardens, and the Sabres thrashed the Maple Leafs by an unbelievable score of 7-2. The victory was the first on the road for the Sabres since they opened the season with a 2-1 decision over Pittsburgh back on October 10th, and for Imlach, the game was letter perfect. He'd been pointing to this one since the day he signed his first Sabres contract, and the team, they did not let him down this time. And in irony of ironies, it was 2 former Leafs, Jerry Meehan and Larry Keenan, who led the Buffalo attack, each scoring a pair of goals. The other Buffalo marksmen were Donnie Marshall, Steve Atkinson, and Paul Andrea. Gary Monahan and Mike Walton, by the way, had the Toronto scores. Marshall and Walton scored off power play goals as the Sabres drew 5 of the 7 minor penalties called in the game. It was 1-1 at the first intermission, and the Sabres locked up the decision with a 3-goal burst in the second period to take a 4-2 lead. The Leafs, who were completely outplayed the last 2 periods, actually held a 46-32 shooting advantage, but they couldn't handle Roger Crozier, who for the second game in a row put on an absolutely brilliant performance against one of the pre-expansion 6 teams. Crozier turned in probably a dozen spectacular saves, and at the other end, Maple Leaf goalie Bruce Gamble was lifted after the Sabres had moved into a 6-2 lead in the third period, allowing young collegian Murray McLaughlin to make his NHL debut, and Murray gave up 1 more goal. Despite the lopsided score, Crozier actually was the difference, although he got a lot of help from his defense, who blocked a carload of shots. Punch Imlach, at the end of the game, when asked to comment on his goalkeeper, his only comment was, "What can I say? This is great. Unbelievable. It's all been said for me by everybody else. Did I thank every man on the club? You bet I did. I'm just happy to come out of Maple Leaf Gardens as a winner." Toronto president Stafford Smythe wasn't around for comments at the end of the game. He disappeared from the Gardens at the end of the second period, with Buffalo leading 4-2. He didn't want to stick around for any further embarrassment. Punch was asked if he would have done the same thing as Smythe did, and his quick comment was, "No way. I've been behind before, and let me say this about Leaf coach Johnny McClellan. He's a hell of a guy and a hell of a coach. He worked for me for 2 years, and I feel sorry for him right now. If I'd stayed, he would have been the guy I would have recommended to take over for me as coach." Imlach was asked if the players worked a little harder than usual, were a little more anxious to win this game. And he said, well, the players, they knew how I felt about this game. Captain Floyd Smith used to play here, and you saw what Meehan and Keenan did. They knew that I wanted this one more than anything else. Want to know how much this game actually meant to Imlach? He said that he rated this game a thrill as big as any of my 4 Stanley Cup triumphs for Toronto. It had something special. No one gave our team a chance, just like very few gave us a snowball's chance in this game. But I told you we would win the game before I started. I'm sorry I gave you the wrong score. Imlach predicted it would be 4-1. I actually thought, Imlach said, that my players would save a few goals for the next time out. Did we shove the needle in deep enough? You can bet we did. Leafs coach McClellan had this assessment, and his was probably the most assessment of the entire night. He said, they beat the hell out of us. What more is there to say? Our fellows were terrible defensively, and they forgot that part of their game. Final score again, Buffalo Sabres 7, Toronto Maple Leafs 2 in the first ever meeting in the NHL regular season before the Sabres and the Maple Leafs. There would be many more games to come over the years. It's a rivalry that's been well documented over the last 50 years.